The warehouse is open. Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 61, Authenticating NBA Kicks. Pleased to be joined by VP of My Gray Authenticated, our old friend Jim Montague. And I mean old because the relationship is old, not because you're old. Jim, good to see you again, sir. How are we doing?
Good to see you, Scott. Good.
I love doing this. It's an NBA time of year, Summer League having wrapped up. You know, before you know it, the season will be here. And this is a little different because obviously you and I and the rest of the My Gray family talk a ton of hockey, talk a ton of NHL, talk a ton of authentication and integrity. Authentication and integrity carries over to the NBA portion that My Gray is very involved in, and we'll get to that. Talking sneakers. Real quick, the Golden State Valkyries auction ongoing at mygrayauctions.com. Also, summer sale. Maybe you're not a puck person. Maybe you do the round ball, as the cool kids call it. 30% off any non-consignment NBA jersey. Quite the haul to be made for you as a consumer at the summer sale. 20% off the Golden State Archive collection and 50% off NBA Game Theater. Don't worry, we'll mention it another time or two. Jim, talk to me about sneakers. What is the difference, and I'm sure that there are many, as far as authenticating a pair of game-worn sneakers / shoes versus doing a game-worn jersey, or is there a lot of similarities?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities. I mean, at the end of the day, authentication has gotten to the point of photo matching. For NBA, the mindset for us, we're okay writing letters on jerseys like hockey jerseys that we know are game worn because of game use and provenance, things like that. But just a basketball jersey in general, you got to be able to put it on somebody's back for us to write a letter. And the same thing comes with shoes. I mean, we can see shoes that show up and they got marks and they look used. But at the end of the day, there's plenty of players that wear some of the same pairs. So you've got it, same style, same colorways, based on year and what have you. So, it's different and it's the same. It's different in that, sometimes you're just looking for, it's a little, harder is not a fair word. But sometimes you're just looking for more, the access to the type of shot you need. So take a jersey, for example. Like if I have the front of the jersey, I just need a shot of the front of them. But I might have a pair of shoes that maybe there's only a mark on the right outside heel. I got to find the shot that shows me the right outside heel. I might have 20 shots that show the front toes. That don't do me any good, So that's where some of the difference is. It's not really the what you're trying to do isn't different. It's just I think you become a little more limited. I don't know if that's a fair word either, but that idea that you have to find specific parts of a shoe that you're looking for based on the pair you're holding in your hand and where the use is on the shoe.
So as a layperson and the host of this very fine podcast, The Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 61, talking to Jim Montague of My Gray about authenticating NBA kicks, I got notes. I got questions. Are there types of wear that you're looking for? And then as I turn this question into like a fork with lots of tines, is the amount of wear that these guys put on, because some of them do change shoes every game or every couple games. Does the amount of wear they put on it or don't put on it help or harm you in the process? Not harm, but make it a bigger mountain to climb because, hey, Scott Linn only got 3 minutes of burn and he only used them in one game. And then the next game he switched up. So you could be looking for soles and wear patterns like tires, Jim. And you're like, I need Linn to get some more minutes before I can make a fair and accurate assessment of these.
Yeah. So, I think we've sort of talked about this a little bit before, and, you start talking about eras, so that's relevant, so you can't really compare 2025 to 1999. They're just too different. Players they wore the shoes for more games back then. It wasn't probably really until, I would say we see some Jordan stuff in the 90s where he's, starting to wear more pairs. But if you take modern shoes, I don't know if it's going to help answer your question, but if you take modern shoes, say 2020 and up, more players have more deals, so to speak. So say like Jason Tatum, or even going all the way back to Chris Paul, all these guys had their own shoe. And so part of that, of having their own shoe, is in the same breath, Well, the Nike or whoever it is wants to sell more shoes, so they create more colorways. So these guys are almost previewing the colorways on the court before they get released sometimes. So, in that case, yes, the guys are wearing, they might wear them for a game or two and then move on to another pair. So but what helps us in that when we're looking at modern shoes, when I say modern, we'll say 2020 up for argument's sake, is our high definition photos. So you can look at, and now because the sneakers are much more noticed, we'll say, element of the game in terms of, because they're trying to sell and guys are always wearing fancier looking shoes and more colors and styles. You'll find more pictures of the actual just shoes. Like there'll be a player and somebody's actually shooting a picture of the shoes by themselves. So when you have close-ups of shoes, you can then use things that you wouldn't necessarily use on an older photo. So like say like creasing in the sole. And you can use that because when you look at these high def photos, you can see like the main crease that'll go through the sole, but you can see all the veins that are coming off that main crease.
Mm-hmm.
So because you can see all those, that's very unique. But if I go back and look at a shoe from, whatever, 2004, and I see a crease, and all I can see is a crease in that area without any definition, you can't really call that a match because you could be putting a crease there in plenty of pairs.
So since you brought
That
up
makes
Tatum,
sense.
no, it certainly does. And I got more questions because I know that, we get into conversations like this and I'd like to go a little deeper. I'll ask you what the process is when shoes come in a minute. But since you brought up Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics, speedy recovery, obviously following the Achilles injury. When guys switch colorways or are nudged by the sneaker maker, the shoe company with the contract, hey, Jason, we'd like you to wear these. Are there tweaks in the model themselves, or is it just as simple as this was green and white, now it's white and green? Everything else is the same. Are there,
I think sometimes it's both. I mean, you'll find certain shoes where, just that one was green and white, and now it's white and green. You might also find sometimes they'll have, I believe, I don't remember if it was like Jason Tatum or Kyrie Irving, one of them had like a SpongeBob pair. So sometimes they'll have these different types of, characters or a special Christmas shoe where it's like a, whatever, holly bushes or wreaths or something on it. So
Sure.
I'm making that up, but they might have special pairs. I've seen a Halloween pair before. So it's both.
And I kind of figured it would be. Again, there's a lot of ways to do this. So when a shoe comes in, what are we looking at right off the bat? Are you first looking at the sneaker to go to pictures, or are you using the Montague brain of history of player and wear patterns?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we're doing, when we get an item like that in, is making sure we know exactly what we're looking at. Because you could anymore, every year there's a new style, a new 2.0, 2.1. So the first thing we're doing is track it down and make sure we know what this shoe is. Depending on the maker of the shoe, sometimes they'll say it right on the inside label. Sometimes you're hunting, and then I say that, like, if you go back to whatever, the early 2000s, and you got a pair of say Shaq shoes, that, and you're like, which ones are these? So you have these are 2.0 or these are 1, or is this a what do we have? I forget the one he had, a special name for his, but so that's one of the first things. We just want to make sure we have the right pair, and we're tracking that down. Yeah, and then like if we get into the authentication on it, you're looking at the shoes, sometimes inside the label, depending, again, who the maker of the shoe is. Sometimes they'll give you a hint whether the shoe was created like for the fall of 2024 or for the spring of 2024. And you're kind of looking from there. If you don't know where that is, sometimes you're just going and trying to find out when, you're just doing sometimes some online searches to find out when this specific style and or colorway, if you can, was released by said company, whoever the company is. And then hopefully that can at least hone you in to where you got to go start looking. So, and then once we do that, we're just looking at the shoe. We're trying to decide, what do I see in the shoe that I want to look for in an image? As opposed to you're not just going and downloading images. You're looking for specific things. And then, the next step is you're trying to hone down and then say, when did he wear these shoes? Does this look like this is a a 1 game pair? Does it look like he wore the same? Because you'll have that too. You'll have a guy who have the same style, but he might have it wear it in 5 games, and he wore 3 pairs in those 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just trying to figure all that out. So your first thing you're doing is try and hone down and say, okay, when do I think he wore this, or when can I at least say he definitively wore this? And then you start hunting through the photos to try and find what you're looking for on the shoes.
Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 61, talking to Jim Montague, Vice President of My Gray Authenticated, talking about authenticating NBA kicks. Throughout the entire hockey sweater process, communication and transparency is super key between My Gray and the NHL equipment managers. With sneakers, what's that connection like? Because that's an intensely personal type thing, and these guys have individual deals. I know that guys have stick deals and skate deals and what have you, but you get sweaters by the box or by the bag from NHL teams. It comes in, there's communication. Hey, you guys and the equipment managers, we've talked about this. Set one was worn, bang bang. Tell me about the communication, and is it to it's got to be
Well,
to probably even higher level, Jim.
well, the thing is with shoes, for the most part, we're getting those from individual collectors.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, we're not getting those from the team. So, like you said, in some cases, some players sell their shoes through organizations, or even you go back, say like Kobe had to deal with Panini at one point, and shoes were going through, or Panini had to deal with Kobe. I don't know how it works, but
Sure.
at one point they would have some of his game use stuff. Same thing with LeBron. So some stuff goes to that. Some stuff, as we know this hobby, some stuff goes out the back door. Other stuff we've had people get it right at the game. And we've had times where people have gotten shoes directly from the player after the game, and then they go ahead and they have the pictures of them getting the shoes. So there's our provenance, and we can go from there. So it's a little different than jerseys in general, just because, like I said, I think probably the one main thing a lot of times is again, it's not like a tremendous pain, but it's sort of like I said, the hunt down to just kind of go, okay, when did he wear this style? And you might have some guys who might have a colorway, and they might wear it at the beginning of the season for a little bit, and then wear it at the end of the season. Sometimes it's a different shoe, sometimes it's the same shoe. So, what you'll find sometimes, say for I'll say younger player in the league, some guy who maybe was a rookie or a sophomore or something, he's the kind of guy you might find a shoe on November and December, and then all of a sudden he wears it again in April, and it's the same shoe.
Right.
In some cases it's not, but those are the guys, before guys have shoe deals, those are the ones you start, you have to make sure that you've kind of check off as many boxes as you can to make sure that it's not the same pair. And, with shoes, a lot of times too, we will have times, there's plenty of stuff that's inconclusive, so you'll have times where, you'll see a pair there's 3 games, and we got 2 of them that match, and we're thinking it's probably the third game in between too. We got the game 1 and game 3. It's probably game 2, but because we can't match it, we won't call it to that game.
NBA players, much like NHL players, especially goaltenders, sometimes wear multiple jerseys over the course of the game. Are there guys that you have found that wear multi-sets of shoes, first half, second half, and they're like, you know what? I just want to be a little more comfortable. These are drier. These are cooler. Something like that?
As a rule of thumb, I would say no. Is somebody doing that all the time? But I will say yes. There's plenty of times where we found players wearing 2 pairs in a game. But it's not like I haven't seen it. Personally, I haven't seen it as a common occurrence. Sometimes you'll see it. It's an easy one to see when you've got a player and he wears 2 different actual colorways in the game. I've seen that plenty of times. Or you'll have sometimes the player will wear a shoe for one game, then he'll wear them in warm-ups the next game. Or warm-ups in first half and then switches to a shoe in the second half. I've seen that as well. So everyone is just a case by case. You have sort of, I won't say rules, because I think at this point, or that way with jerseys too, you kind of have these rules that are in your head that you've seen as sort of the norm, but you always have to assume that something's not going to be the norm.
It's the hobby, and that's why My Gray is the place to do this, because, well, there's integrity, there's transparency. You have your sort of guidelines, but you know that they're not it's an amoeba basically. It moves, but we know that we try to keep it within the rails. WNBA ongoing, NBA before you know it. Golden State Valkyries auction ongoing. Check it out, mygrayauctions.com. Really cool stuff, iconic stuff, milestone stuff from the early portion of the franchise. Summer sale ongoing as we speak. 30% off any non-consignment NBA jersey, 20% off the Golden State Archive collection jerseys, and 50% off NBA game theater. Jim, we touched on sort of the old school versus the new school. And I was thinking back to the guys when you and I were of a certain age. And I remember my David Thompson and
I
my
loved him.
my Paul Westphal pony posters and
Yeah.
Gervin and seeing Julius with the Converse. And this was before Nike was even, hatched or on the whatever, or Akeem Olajuwon and the, oh God, was it British Knights? Was it, I forget the
British Knights.
he had a
Right.
deal with sort of a non-mainstream and made it mainstream. And then you had Stephon Marbury. But rewind a little bit. Have you ever delved into trying to match like the old school ponies or cons?
Yeah, it's
Because
funny you
like
said ponies. I've never received a pair of ponies. I used to wear those, and I wore those
so
in high
did
school all the
I.
time. That was my shoe.
I couldn't dunk like David Thompson. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I
yeah.
could touch
He
the
was one of
top
my
of the
favorite players.
oh,
Yeah,
same. I
yeah,
could touch the top of the Nerf backboard in my bedroom that I put on top of my closet door, but I was not.
yeah.
I couldn't elevate like him. But those are like the shoes of yesteryear, and like you said, back then, guys were wearing them for
Yeah,
longer
we and
periods
we've
of
had
time.
we've had some shoes. We've had a good decent amount of shoes that show up from like the '80s, and we've had some winners. Definitely
Mhm.
had some winners, but it's harder just because of your quality of image. That's almost what we're going back to all the way at the beginning of our conversations when you're talking like old versus new, and because you're trying to find these subtle scuffs and marks. Sometimes you just don't have a good enough quality image from back then to see that. Because sometimes, like again, when we talk about modern shoes, like sometimes you can have a scuff on a shoe that actually doesn't create a mark; it's just a scuff. But with the quality of the high def photos, if you have the right angle, you can see it. But you go back to image shots from the '80s that are guys from far away, not no close ups on the shoes. It's tough
I,
to find that.
I'm sure, and I'll ask you about the quality of the photography too. We see this in some of the NHL pieces that the me at home tries to photo match the brightness of the arena and sort of the white balance and the over. I can imagine that would wreak a little havoc on your quest to match up sneakers as well as you
Yeah,
want
and
to
that
sometimes.
almost go back almost to the. I don't want to change this subject of shoes, but we found that like we used to have that when we were authenticating all the NBA jerseys for the NBA program. You just had different buildings that had better photos, and you're just assuming it was the lighting as well, because you might have a photographer who's shooting in one building, the same photographer in another building, but his shots in building B were better than building A, and sometimes you're just it's the lighting or whatever. So yeah, that's all relevant.
You mentioned some big names already. My Gray has had the great opportunity and great fortune to authenticate some truly iconic and memorable pairs of shoes. Tell me a little bit about the ones that stick out to your memory.
Well, I know we kind of went over a few, and the one was the Jordan flu game. And I'd be honest, I went back to this today and I kind of re-looked at some stuff just to refresh my memory on them. We see so many items that, if somebody says, "Oh, you did those shoes," I can go, "Yeah, I did those," but I just don't remember what it was about them that was the match or whatever. But when I look back on this one, oh, yeah, that's right. So this pair of shoes to me was kind of I don't know if the words amazing. It was like one of the quickest to do because I had so many multiple shots that so say there was, I think it was on the outside right shoe. There was like this pairing of like white marks, and you could see it in multiple images. So that's always one thing too. Like when you see things, especially in the older photos, you're trying to find it in more than just one image. So that what you're looking at in this one image isn't some sort of anomaly, or again, when we talk about quality images, isn't some sort of um, a piece of film dirt or a shadow or whatever the case may be. So
Mhm.
you're trying to if you can I find this in more than one photo, especially when you get into something that's a pair of Jordan final shoes. You don't you're not going to authenticate that on one tiny mark on on a one photo, and we just so happened to have like I think it was like 6 or 7 shots. All had showed us stuff on both pairs of shoes, and it was amazing. I when I re-educated myself, and again when I looked at it, it was like, oh, that's right. I'm like, this one fell together. Like, I don't want to say easy, that's not fair, but quickly. And I was like, it would just you every time you're downloading an image, you're like, there it is, there it is. So it was just like it was one of those ones that one of those comments that you always sort of say. You go, well, if it's real, we should be able to match it. And that was one that it just was perfect. It was perfect, that pair.
And again, credit the target of all those pictures. Obviously, you mentioned the name Kobe. There's a 12-13 pair. The authentication process similar. And again, thank God he was as photographed as he was.
Yeah, and that one I double checked on too. That was a perfect example of Panini having to deal with Kobe. So I won't say it made it easier, but it honed us in on that game, because that's what Panini had authenticated to. They said, hey, the shoes are from 4/12/13, and when we went to the images for 4/12/13, we saw everything we needed to see, because I believe that was a style shoe that he wore multiples of that year. Memory served me right.
As far as value and highest selling, as far as authenticated, do you have a rough educated guesstimate on what that was?
That's what I was hoping. Yeah, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. And unfortunately, I don't have the access to it right now. But
it's okay. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, but I do know that flu pair went pretty well.
Yeah, I'm certain it would have been. And it's again, we mentioned this word. You try not to overuse the word iconic, but so many people know about the flu game. So many people know about this, or I can only imagine what something like that would have gone for. And in this case, Google is probably my friend. Talk to me a little bit about, because this is something that, all generations, this is a good part about this hobby. You never know who's going to be into what, Jim. And the growth of the sneaker culture, how has it influenced the demand for game-worn pieces? And I imagine it has, because people are like, oh, yeah, so-and-so was wearing these. I mean, you mentioned the phrase marketing, or the word marketing at the beginning, where this Jason Tatum, it's available for him, and then the public's like, I need those. So it feeds. I mean, it's chicken and egg kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting, because it's one of those things where I feel like from the collector standpoint, what I see as the guy doing the authentication coming in, I feel like what I feel like I'm seeing is a lot of the collectors are just more player based. I don't know if it's necessarily a specific pair, like, hey, I have to have that pair, but it's the one thing I will say I always see with shoes, the same thing with jerseys and the hobby in general, is moments. So, a guy's definitely loving a pair of shoes more if LeBron James got a triple double in them versus, some other game. So I think more so than style, where, like, that's one thing I will say is a little different. Like, we always talk about the hockey collector, and I always think of patch jerseys, like NBA patch jerseys. I don't think that excites guys so much. The NBA collector, they're still about what the guy did in the shirt, and who the player is, what he did in it, and how many times he wore it, versus hockey. They're like, oh, it's another style because it's a different patch. So it's something that collector wants. So, to me, I do think that hockey guys will still collect moment wise, but from the basketball standpoint, I do feel like they're both their favorite player. So, like, they want stuff from their favorite player, and then secondarily, if they can put it to a moment, something good, then that's what's important to them.
It's Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 61. The voice you hear is that of Jim Montague, Vice President of My Gray Authenticated. We're talking NBA sneakers and authenticating them. It is a labor. It is cool. It is intense. And it certainly does pay off from a sense of pride when Jim's like, we got this one. Real quick about the collectors. You said, some of the NHLers do perhaps the moments or what have you, or patch or wear or I was there type thing. Have you noticed, and maybe you haven't, the folks who collect sneakers, do they also do jerseys, or is it sort of a little different? Like the guys who I want Kobe something. Are they the types who have whatever?
I think from what I've seen anyway, from the NBA collector, they're kind of both. I think if guys are collecting I don't really haven't really seen too many people that are just straight shoes.
Hmm.
And if they were straight shoes when they came to us, at some point they become jersey guys too. Um, but it's more of a mix to me. I see a lot of guys collecting both.
As far as popularity, and again, this is probably a little bit of a tougher one, but what's hot of late? Jordan's always hot. Kobe, God rest his soul, is always hot. Giannis, is it who I would think it would be, or are there other surprises?
It's the main guys. I think a lot of guys, we do get a lot of Tatum stuff, and I think some of that has to do with the differences in the pairs. I mean, I do think that's one place where it does rear its head, as we were just talking about. But uh, yeah, again, basketball is definitely driven by the name. We will have a few guys. I know we have a collector is a big Tracy McGrady guy, so we get Tracy McGrady stuff from him all the time,
Love them.
and but so there's still some guys who have some who are fans of some of the older players. And I remember we had one guy who was a big Chris Paul guy. So it depends. Again, it's about the what's hot is really in the terms of the just like hockey for us. It's in the mind of the collector.
Of course. And as far as rookies go, and again, maybe this is a bridge too far for this conversation, but nothing's ever too far for you, Jim. So I just,
Shay. Well, he's not a rookie anymore, but
no, but
he's red hot now too, guys.
yeah,
You got you
SGA, I would
see more of his stuff.
imagine.
Yeah,
Right, especially after the title. But
yeah.
I mean, are we going to start to see an influx of Cooper Flag and the next generation? I mean, he played a little bit during Summer League, and then Mavs shut him right down. They're like, we've seen enough. You went for 31 or whatever it was. We're good. And then another multi-part question. Do people start to get into college sneakers? Hey, I love Duke, and I need one of his here and one in Dallas.
Yeah, we haven't done tons of college stuff, and I feel like I'm trying to think when we did do a batch of college stuff for once that came through one guy's collection, um, but when you talk about players, we say like a Cooper Flag. I mean, some of that's just about I'm sure everybody wants to get them. The question
Right.
is, can they get released, or who's going to release them, or will he be handing any out, or what's does he have a game plan? Does the team have a game plan? So every this isn't like a quiet hobby anymore that's hidden underground where people don't know about it. Everybody knows about it, and players included. And the question will be whether it's time will tell,
Right.
basically.
And that's honestly, and this goes back to where we started. It's a function of the NBA being so darn popular and such a worldwide game. It is a function of the sneaker culture where you have stores that are focused on retro. You have collectors, massive collectors. It's no more a secret. And it hasn't been for quite some time. I mean, honestly, I think we're just scratching the surface. And I think it will become more and more, pardon the word, mainstream. But I think that people will be even more into it within the next couple of years. And that makes me excited for those hobbyists. I just think that the stores that we see, whether they're in Nashville or New York City or Philadelphia or wherever, oh, I need to go to this one retro place where they buy, sell, and trade, and they have amazing stuff. And then these are the folks that I think are going to start to get in, the ones that are going to start getting into NBA game worns of all eras.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that we all want is growth of the hobby, because growth of the hobby just means everything's great for your collection. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So, but again, I hate to keep dragging it over to hockey a little bit. I know we're talking basketball, but we just did our expo at the beginning of July, and there were a lot of new faces that I never seen before. So that's a really good thing. So we know that the people are still growing in hockey. So I only see it with you know these stories of items making it to ESPN and everything else that are selling in auction. Is it's getting people's um, bandwidth wider on that this is actually a thing you can do. And
Mhm.
yeah, I just go back to when I first got my first item ever, and I remember guy offering it, and I was just like, "Will you tell me I can actually get a game worn?" I remember at the time I was collecting like autographs, and I'm like, "Will
Mhm.
you tell me I can get something that the player wore in the game?" I was like, "Really?" And it took me a little while to buy into it because I thought I was just getting duped, but now that it's like a real thing, you know, I could see people jumping on the bandwagon a lot sooner.
It's a
I was doing
very
a lot of,
real
I was
thing.
doing a lot of recon first,
That's, you
but
know
you
what?
don't have to do that anymore.
Understood. You don't do that anymore because of guys like you, Mr.
Yeah.
Montague. Tell me a little bit about any tips for the collectors as far as display and care. When you get a game worn jersey, the first thing they tell you is if you're going to display it, the sun is your enemy. Make sure it's got UV protection. And again, this might be a dumb question. These are leather and other fabrics, although these days I don't, they're probably some sort of high tech, whatever, maybe with a little bit of leather or still a lot of leather. I have no idea. Is there a spray or don't spray it? You want it as it was worn in the games and don't touch, just make sure you keep it out of the sunlight.
Yeah, I'd be lying to you if I told you I knew exactly what the best way to do it is. I don't, but what I do know is the simple things, like you said, try and keep them out of the sun, keep them in as temperature controlled as you can, and
Mhm.
and try and do some. We've done searching ourselves, and you do any kind of searching online about the best ways to store. And one guy will say, put those little what are those little bags called that take the humidity out of the air.
Yeah,
And
right,
then somebody's like, well, no, that dries out the shoes. So it's like,
right.
there's so many contradictory comments about what to do. So, sometimes you don't know about, you can go back to some shoes from the 90s that were made with, I forget what the material was called, but it dried up like a sponge and they're
Like
like
cork.
falling apart.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like there's shoes from the 90s that did that, so people bought some shoes in the 90s and all of a sudden they're just disintegrated, so, I would imagine nowadays the shoes are made with much better material, but sometimes I'd say time will tell. Maybe on some of those as well. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, the simple thing would be just what you said. I mean, the basics as climate control as you can. Humidity is probably your enemy, and yes, direct sunlight for any advanced amount of time is going to be your enemy too.
All right, you got the basketball bug? Check out mygrayauctions.com. The Valkyries, the Golden State Valkyries auction ongoing. Time is starting to wind down, so get in, make a bid, make several bids. From early in the franchise, some very, very cool pieces available. The summer sale is ongoing at mygray.com. Not just hockey, a whole lot of basketball. 30% off any non-consignment NBA jersey, 20% off the Golden State Archive Collection jerseys, and 50% off NBA Game Theater. Deals to be had. Jim Montague, before we get out of here, let's do a little overtime. So summertime is normally concert season. A lot of outdoor shows. Just recently, and actually I'm still watching, and again, you and I are of a certain age, I'm watching on CNN the 40 years since Live Aid and what Bob Geldof went through. And while I did not go to
I
see
take it.
it,
I haven't watched it yet.
oh, it is
All right, go
so
ahead. Yeah,
good.
yeah,
It's 4 episodes. They've already aired 3. They're an hour apiece.
yeah.
It brings back so many memories. I remember where I was on that Saturday afternoon. I remember calling home I was a teenager and I was slinging hoagies in Northeast Philly at the Hoagie Experience at Welsh Road and Roosevelt Boulevard. I voluntarily worked a double because a bunch of my friends got tickets to go down to see the concert at old, now long gone JFK Stadium. And I called home every couple hours to my mom or my dad or my sister. And I was like, hey, do me a favor. Can you flip the cassette? Because I was attempting to have them record the entire thing
I,
for as
I
long
did
as they could.
I
What
did
a
that on VHS. My friend was on vacation. He had MTV. I didn't. I kept running over his house like every, so many hours. I was just recording. I think I still have those tapes. I think I'm in my office actually.
Do you have a VCR is the next question, because we should
Yeah,
have a viewing party at the next expo.
there you go.
I would like that. So anyway, huge memories with that. But summer's concert season. We saw Old Dominion Country Act recently at Merriweather Post Pavilion with some friends. That was a lot of fun. Friends are going almost on a regular basis now out to Vegas to. I still haven't made up my mind. Red Rocks in Colorado is a bucket list venue, Jim.
Yeah,
I
I would
would
argue that.
love to go see. I've never been. I think the Sphere would be cool. I know I saw the Eagles were there and different bands and Fish and the Dead and Company and what have you. I also worry about that if I one day get there, I'm going to vomit and fall over the rail because it looks like it's too steep. It reminds me of the old Brendan Byrne Arena, because up there,
Up
that
top.
that up top, that
Yeah,
was. Yeah,
I was.
correct me if I'm wrong. That was
Yeah,
I went there a couple times to see some games, see some Devil's Cap stuff in the 80s. I was like, this is where it's going to end. I'm too young to go over the rail here. Tell me about what the summer concert season means to you, my friend.
Well, it used to mean a lot more than it does now. Let's put it that way. I'm getting to the old grumpy stage where I'm like, I saw those guys. I'm not paying $130 to go see those guys. You know what I mean? I have a few bands on my bucket list, and they're one of them's not playing until December. So uh, I probably won't be doing too much during the concert season here. But I mean, I got Phillies season tickets too, so package. So I go to plenty of ball games during the summer.
I understand. Should I ask who's coming to December and where?
A band called the Beths. Have you ever heard of them?
I have not heard of them.
Yeah, they're from New Zealand. They've got like 3 albums out.
Okay.
Really good. Really good. I like
Okay.
them a lot. Going to
Okay.
be at Union Transfer in Philly in December.
I will put them on the give it a try list. Maybe when we're done recording, I'll ask Alexa if she can play me a couple songs, and we'll see what we can do. And then there's also Whiskey Myers, who I highly recommend. They're sort of a folky country. They're coming to Wolf Trap in Northern Virginia before too long. I think it's Labor Day weekend,
Okay.
and I would love to go see those guys.
Yeah, I
live.
mean, typically if I'm going to anything anymore, it's something in a small place. And
Right.
then, again, like I said, maybe a couple bucket lists. I have a couple bands I'll still go see that I've seen a bunch of times already. But like I said, again, the curmudgeon, I'm just like, and the other one, they got to be really good if I'm going to get stuck standing for like 3 hours. Screw that. It's like, I'm like, is there a seat? Okay, I'm kind of in, but you're going to make me stand forever, like, and sit through like 5 warm-up bands. I'm not interested.
No, but you might be interested in the Golden State Valkyries auction over at mygrayauctions.com. There's your segue to close. Summer sale ongoing over at mygray.com. NBA Game Theater, 50% off. Golden State Archive Collection jerseys, 20% off, and 30% off any non-consignment NBA jersey. Jim Montague, this has been fun, as it always is. Thank you for your time, my friend. I appreciate it. Good to see you. Until next time, this has been volume 61 of Tales from the Warehouse, authenticating NBA kicks. Whole lot of sneaker talk. Till next time, the warehouse is closed.